And within just a matter of months now, we have characterizations of resource values, the likes of which have never actually been portrayed nationally. So we have the second piece of the stool, if you will, in place, and that is a level of heightened awareness that just won't seem to go away. And as a consequence, that's a very good thing for this region, because it tees up the third one. That was the resources that were heretofore not available to largely get at both the science and the implementation efforts. And as you know, the MAVIS plan, and I'll give you this characterization right out of the gate, the MAVIS plan under no circumstances is a prescriptive plan. It was intentionally not designed to be prescriptive, both in terms of the process and the period of time that could be written and analyzed and all the input given, but just simply all the pieces and all the players that make up such a plan could not come out of the gate prescriptive, especially for something Congress has to act on. But it fully recognized, and I would hope for this audience, appreciate the administration's move to, in that particular report and that plan, to recognize and put right on the table things like the Clean Water Act penalties, the possibility of obviating the process where that normally goes back to the general fund, to dedicate, as the MAVIS plan points out, substantial portion of those resources to restoration. And that in and of itself begins to basically put the potential to put fuel in the tank. Parallel with that, of course, is the science piece, science driving policy piece, where the BP, with its resources, which will play into the NERDA damage assessment and damage recovery, also appropriated, well, I guess we can use that term with BP. They will set aside $500 million for the next 10 years, $50 million a year, that they, by formal announcement late last week, found their way to the Gulf Alliance structure to coordinate that priority science through a 20-person advisory council, 10 appointed by BP and 10 appointed by the two each of the 5 Gulf states to go in coordination. This is these two drivers, the prospect of having that kind of research funding to deal with fate and effects, health effects, and ecosystem restoration science is resources this region has not heretofore seen. And while there has not been a project affected by that process yet, the prospects are enormous for leading to a look at the whole system health approach as to just one vector or another in terms of true sustainability and long-term ecosystem restoration. That's the prospect. The process will play itself out. So the fourth piece, I can tell you, after 20 years of having to battle with the Gulf region versus the other regions of the country for attention and competitiveness, is the imagination of actually a merger of the type of group that's sitting right here in this chapel. Voices that could come together on consensus to provide guiding recommendations as a collective would actually make the region truly unparalleled in its structured approach to being able to deal with the opportunities that are now on the table with the MAVIS plan. As you know, the MAVIS plan calls for Congress to act. Well, that's a high proposition. It does call for Congress to act, and Congress doesn't act because it was told to act on a particular provision. Congress deliberates. And so as that deliberation goes on, again, to imagine a common voice such as the collective in this particular chapel providing a great deal of the background influence and characterizations of those recommendations would be huge, would be absolutely huge. It's to that end that I know questions have come up already emerging. It was only a week ago yesterday the White House announcement was made public about the Restoration Task Force, the fact that my administrator, Lisa Jackson, would lead it. It is obviously a task force not in place today because its full characterization will be basically tethered in the executive order. And then obviously there is a level of work to do after that. Who will the state appointees be? Who will the federal appointees be, and the like. But as that process moves forward, one question is, why a task force at the same time in parallel with the Gulf Restoration Council? The Gulf Restoration Council is something that Congress has to act on. If you could understand the world from our Buck and I as only a small smattering of the larger collective, when a process like this is born, it is born without resources. It segues in immediately to the existing work, and just like the states and the local governments, that's a big pill to swallow. So as a consequence, the Gulf Restoration Council will be sought after as a legislative structure with the appropriate resources and needed to carry out its day-to-day activities. In the interim, what they determined was, as we said before, Congress deliberates. How long that deliberation takes place is frankly anybody's guess. Because of that, the administration had the ability to affect the task force development immediately, so that the process could begin, particularly the process of gaining your insights, your particular involvement in the deliberations that would lead to the recommendations that would go before a resource council, and ultimately go on for years to affect the activities in the restoration of the region. Now, that is a tall order since a week ago yesterday, but that is in effect the background blueprint that is under development. There are, again, persons not named. There are questions that could come up about what the CWA, the Clean Water Act penalties, might be. That is a legal process in and of itself. We don't know those numbers, but we do know that these resources are in play, and following the MABUS recommendation, we know that actually for one of the very first times, the region is out to capture as much of them as the Congress would basically allow to be dedicated to restoration. So it's an amazing time for this region. I know many of you are from national, and some of you even from international organizations, but this is an amazing time for the Gulf, the likes of which are just frankly unfortunate that it stems from a disaster, clearly, but opportunity nonetheless to have the region take its place for the focus of what the values bring to both itself and the nation, and deal with some of the tough policy and programmatic framework issues that are on the table. So, getting back to the slide, as was pointed out before, the Gulf did not start in April with a Deepwater Horizon oil spill. It started with a lot of issues. And so what will really be at work is how to segue the pieces together so that it does make has the potential to make one collective restoration framework that really gets at the heart of the key issues, be they climate change and relative sea level rise, be they the influence of the Mississippi River Basin and Gulf hypoxia and the many hypoxic zones that actually exist throughout most of the key estuaries in the Gulf. These are large opportunistic undertakings that this particular time in space, and again with your assistance, will allow us to get literally on the table in the appropriate way, and no doubt move that ball a lot further than would have been the occasion otherwise. So, again, pleasure to be here with you this morning, and we'll just try to tee it up for Q&A.